I just find that when I'm talking to you, my face, like, it's like I'm smiling so big the whole time, my face starts to hurt. I actually remember my face hurting during that week because I was laughing so hard, mostly at you.
Well, it's not a reputation I got to say that I want to have, in the sense that if women's face hurt when they talk to me, that could be interpreted in many different ways. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, thank God you're married, right? I'm just kidding. Oh my God, Jonathan, it's so good to have you on the show. And I know that this book, it's not like a super recent release. I know it came out, several months ago, but I'm just now getting my hands on it. By the way, I did have the book delivered today, so I know I was kind of bugging your publicist or publisher trying to get a copy of it as a PDF. So I appreciate them being so cool about it. But I did get a copy in my hand, so I have it right here, and it's just an awesome book. I mean, you put so much time and effort into this, and really make super complicated stuff really easy to understand. So how much time did it take you to write this thing?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this is not just a cookie cutter book by any means. It was over a decade of my life in the works. I didn't start out on the journey intending to write a book. I just am a geeky guy, and I enjoy technical topics. So that's why I was a senior program manager at Microsoft for more than a decade, because I like to work with really technical people. I'm not a coder myself, but I like to work with coders to get in their minds and then translate what they sometimes have a hard time communicating because they're so wickedly smart, and figuring out a way to communicate that and turn it into systems that everyday people can use. And so I did that. I love doing that with technology, and I love doing that with biology as well, simply because I had some struggles in my personal life when I was younger, prior to being an engineer at Microsoft. My first job was as a personal trainer, and I had some really interesting experiences there, which turned me on to human biology. And then I really have that engineer mindset, so just wanted to deconstruct it and understand it. And then people said, "Why don't you write this down?" So one thing led to another, and well over a decade after I started, a book called The Calorie Myth came out, and ended up doing quite well. So that was very nice.
Well, and I think a lot of this is probably kind of born out of your, I don't know if it's frustration or just your love of your clients. You wanted to give them something that they could really understand, and actually something that works, because you were working with clients for, I mean, how many years were you as a personal trainer?
I wasn't a trainer that long, because it didn't take more than 2 or 3 years for me to give up. And what I mean by that is
Right.
I was taught what most people continue to be taught today, through no fault of their own. I mean, you can't control what you're taught. In some ways, the internet has changed things a little bit. But anyway, I digress. I was taught what most people are taught today, which is that obesity is a character flaw, and that you just need to try harder. It's a moral failing, and because it's a moral failing, there's really no point to have a scientific discussion about it, because if the people are just stupid and lazy, well, what role does science have to play in making people less stupid and lazy, right? They just need to try harder. So I was versed in the personal trainer mindset of more of a punisher. You're the person who needs to force the people that don't have their own willpower to burn more calories and to starve themselves harder. But here was the wrinkle. So at the same time that I was at this time, I was in my early 20s. This is the way I paid my way through college. So late teens, early 20s. The vast majority of my clients were females who were moms or grandmothers. So different gender and significantly different age from me. And at that time, I was putting these beautiful, lovely, intelligent women on 1,200 calorie diets and having them do just chronic cardio. At the same time, I was consuming about 6,000 calories per day because I wanted to be a big, strong football player. Now, while my dear female clients were not getting smaller, but were getting sick and sad, I was eating 5 times more calories than they were, doing less cardio than they were, and I was also becoming sick and sad and also not achieving my goals. So I said to myself,
Mm-hmm.
self, you can no longer blame these people for not trying hard, or just saying, like, I don't care how many food journals you show me, you clearly aren't actually eating 1,200 calories, because I knew that I was eating 6,000 calories per day. I kept a little Excel spreadsheet. I did double shots of olive oil because it's very difficult to consume that many calories consistently. And I knew that it wasn't getting me any larger. So who was I to say that just blind caloric restriction should be getting these people smaller? So much like a physician such as yourself, who if you saw patients and they got worse, not better, every time you saw them, you'd probably stop doing what you're doing because I'm sure you got in the business to help people. So I wasn't a trainer for that long because I didn't feel qualified, and that's when I went on this 10 plus year journey to hopefully feel more qualified.
So what would you tell old Jonathan back then now, or I guess if you were Jonathan then and talking to those clients, what would you have done differently working with them, knowing what you know?
There's one key paradigm shift. Well, let's say that there's two, and Gary Taubes was one of the first people to try to communicate this, but Gary is like so smart that sometimes he can talk at a level that not everyone can understand. So two key distinctions.
Right.
One is telling someone that they need to eat less and exercise more is analogous to, so I live in Seattle. World champion Seahawks, Seattle Seahawks, Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
So imagine that on the off chance that the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks lost a football game. They lost a football game. Everyone in Seattle is depressed. The head coach calls a press conference, and the press immediately says, "Coach, why did you lose this game?" And the coach looks down, scratches his head, looks up very inquisitively, and says, our opponent scored too many points, and we scored too few points. Everyone in the press conference would look at the coach like he's a moron because he just stated a description of what happened, not an explanation of why it happened or how the team could avoid it in the future. But the same thing happens every day in personal training offices, in medical offices, and just around dinner tables and water coolers where people say, "I'm struggling with my weight," and individuals respond with, "Well, clearly you just need to eat less and exercise more." That doesn't explain anything. It's another analogy, just because I think analogies are the best way to communicate stuff sometimes. Imagine someone was struggling psychologically rather than metabolically. So maybe someone just had a terrible event happen in their life. They're suffering from depression, and they walk into their psychiatrist's office. Their psychiatrist sits them down and says, "Look, Mary," let's say the person's name is Mary, says, "Look, Mary, here's the situation. I got it figured out. I got a diagnosis for you. You just need to frown less and smile more." And of course, Mary would ask for her money back because that provides no information. Mary knows that she has a shortage of smiles and an abundance of frowns in her life, but what she's asking for is, why is that happening? Why is it that no matter how hard I try, I continue to frown and have a hard time smiling? Think about this in terms of obesity. Imagine you have a person, and then I'll stop talking. You talk for a little bit. So I get excited about this stuff. Imagine you have a person, and it's later in the day. I usually do my interviews early in the day so I get loopy later in the day. So imagine you've got a person. We're doing all sorts of imagination. It's like Sesame Street.
I love it.
All right, so imagine you have a person. That's not too hard to imagine, especially if you live in the Midwest. Imagine you have a person who has, let's say, 100 pounds of surplus fat on their body. Right, not super uncommon in this country. And this isn't just 100 pounds of fat. This is 100 pounds of too much fat. Okay, that person's body has approximately, let's assume the 3,500 calories in a pound of fat thing we hear is true. That person has 350,000 calories sitting in their body already. Why are they ever hungry? That in and of itself shows, like, that simple distinction. This isn't like, it's so much deeper than willpower, right? If you eat a big meal, let's say 1,000-calorie meal, you're going to be full for a long time. But why is it that you can have 350,000 calories already in your body and be hungry all the time? Doesn't that indicate that maybe there's something neurological going on or hormonal going on or just a deeper problem in general? That was only distinction one. Do you want to hear about distinction two?
I really, really do.
All right, so distinction two is much quicker. It's much quicker, but it's like the corollary to distinction one. So distinction two is as follows. Imagine your car was running really poorly, right? would putting just it's running poorly. So it's just not running well. It's like making weird sounds, and it doesn't seem to have, as much kick as it used to have. You wouldn't think that was a problem with the quantity of fuel in your gas tank. It wouldn't, like, the amount of fuel you have in your car doesn't determine how it runs. It determines how long it can run. It's an energy source. But what actually determines how well your car is running is the quality of fuel you put in it, right? If you put kerosene or lighter fluid in your car's gas tank, it's not going to run well. And that's not a function of you putting too much fuel into the car's gas tank. It's a function of you putting the wrong fuel in the car's gas tank. So if you put premium gasoline in your car's gas tank, wouldn't it make sense that the car would run a little bit better than if you put, for example, lighter fluid in the car's gas tank, which might sound like a silly example, but today, if you look at the way people fuel their bodies, we don't eat food anymore, right? For thousands and thousands, dare I say millions of years, depending on your religious beliefs, we ate things you could find in nature, plants and animals. 40 to 60% of the average American's diet does not come from either plants or animals anymore. So we're putting lighter fluid in our gas tank, and people are saying, well, your problem is you're just putting too much gas in your gas tank. That's not the problem at all. The problem is not the abundance of calories. The abundance of calories is the result of a poor quality of fuel and then a dysfunctional body saying, this fuel isn't getting the job done, so I need more and more and more.
Mm-hmm. So principle one is really the whole calories in, calories out, not really legit, And number two is it's calories are not created equal, right? It's like different kinds of fuel. And I think explaining that to those clients, it would probably really free up a lot of guilt and just because, I get this. I get patients coming in here all the time, and they're like, they show me what they eat, and their main, symptom or complaint is they can't lose weight, and it's like they're eating like birds and they can't lose weight, and they work out like crazy. They do hot yoga like every day or twice a day sometimes, and it's so frustrating because they beat themselves up. So being able to really understand this and see that it's really not so much about calories in, calories out, and that if you are really looking at calories, it's the kinds of calories you're having. So comparing, 100 calories of, Twinkies versus 100 calories of steak, it's a very different kind of ball game, right? Is that kind of what principle 1 and 2 are saying, or am I totally off track?
You're not totally off track at all. I think you're right. You're right next to the track. So I'm going to give you one quick point of clarification. And although it's minor and kind of semantic, I think it's critical because I'm not the first person by any means to say that calories should not be the focus. But what often happens in America, especially on the internet, is people see a book titled The Calorie Myth, and they think that I'm saying that calories are a myth and that calories don't matter at all, and that calories in, calories out is like unicorns and is just nonsense. Okay, I don't think anyone is saying that. What we're saying, and what the science has now proven, is that calories exist. There's no question that they exist, and they matter, but they are one piece of a massively more complicated problem. And to focus on them exclusively, which is what's happened in our culture, is not only wrong, it's counterproductive. Here's one silly example. Heroin has no calories in it. Does that mean it's good for you? Right? But seriously, by the logic that people say, that's a crazy example. Walk into McDonald's. Look at a Coca-Cola billboard. They hang their hat on the fact Coke says it's only 140 calories. Hell, Diet Coke doesn't even have any calories in it. What's the problem? It's just a 100-calorie snack pack. Everything in moderation, right? But what we are starting to understand, what the actual hardcore clinical science, when you look at neurobiology and gastroenterology and endocrinology, not even necessarily nutrition science, but when you look at these biochemical arenas, calories in and of themselves are just benign. They're energy. Here, energy. You need this to live. What actually determines if your body functions or not is everything else, right? If you don't eat enough vitamin C, you get a disease. If you don't eat enough amino acids, you die. Calories are one of many elements, and all these other elements, we don't say, how many milligrams of thiamine did you consume today? And were you sure to balance milligrams of thiamine in and milligrams of thiamine out? We don't perceive any other aspect of this equation as this ludicrous mathematical thing. And because we have this flawed map of how the human body works, much like thinking the earth is flat is just a flawed paradigm. And if you think the earth is flat, it's intuitive. Look out your window. It looks like the earth is flat. But sadly, once you understand science, it's wrong. And once you understand that it's wrong and things like gravity exist, that can mean that you can sail all around the world and you won't fall off. Once you understand that calories aren't inherently bad, they're neutral. It's everything else that comes along with calories that are good or bad. It frees you up to sail all around the world in terms of the foods you eat and the exercises you do. And you don't live in this mathematical cage where calories determine everything you do. It's just ludicrous.
No more being a victim to rules of nutrition, and you can eat in abundance certain foods on this plan, right? Like the green leafy veggies and other foods you talk about. I mean, you get to eat a lot more than what you might have been eating before, right?
That's exactly right. The subtitle of the book says how to eat less. Oh, excuse me, no, not that. How to eat more. No, I just ruined everything. Can we start the interview over? No, just kidding. How to eat more.
I just hang up on you.
Exactly. How to eat more, exercise less, lose weight, and live better. I would have preferred for it to say lose fat and live better, but got to make compromises every once in a while with the publisher. And this is absolutely the case. Eating an abundance of the right types of food. Again, this is how nefarious, to use $1 million word, these calorie myths are, right?
Right.
We have to sit here and explain why eating an abundance of the right kinds of food is good for you. Food is the only way to get that which is essential for life. Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, these are required for life. And if you want more of them, and you want to have better health, and you want to give your body the raw material it needs to function well and even to heal itself, of course you need to eat an abundance of the right types of foods. And that message, a message of enjoy an abundance of the right types of foods so you heal the underlying neurological, gastroenterological, and endocrinological causes of obesity, such that your brain automatically balances calories for you, just like it does in every other species on the planet. Isn't it amazing that cats can't count calories, but they don't become obese when you leave them to their own dynamic? That is what we need to do. We need that abundance of food to heal our body and restore our body's natural ability to balance calories for us automatically.
Preach, Jonathan. Love it. So let's talk about the concept of set point, because I know that there's people listening who are frustrated. They've been working out really hard and eating according to the way they think they really should and everything they've been taught, and they just feel like they're at this set point, and no matter what they do, they cannot lose weight beyond that. So you talk about this in your book, how to determine what your set point is, how do you change it? Talk a little bit about that.
This is another key distinction, right? The reason that the calories in, calories out the way it's been presented to us is not helpful, and the reason the quality of calories matters so much is there's this overarching system, this self-regulating or homeostatic system in our body. And homeostatic seems like a big word, but we all learned it in high school biology class, homeostasis, which is just that every biological organism in the world, from a flower to a cheetah to your sister, tries to maintain balance automatically, right? That's just how the only reason something is able to stay alive is because it's maintaining balance in a certain range. If your body temperature becomes too low or too high, you die, right? Your body has to have an automatic regulatory system to maintain the range in which life can exist. So you drink more water, you automatically urinate more. You walk into a hot room, you automatically sweat more. You don't need to balance water in and water out consciously. Your body does it unconsciously. You don't have to manage breaths in consciously and breaths out consciously. You could if you wanted to, and if there was a reality television show about it, people probably would, but you don't have to if you don't want to, if your brain is working correctly. So The set point just describes that just like every other mission critical function in our body, energy balance is automatically regulated by our body. And people used to call this the set point theory. That was many decades ago before a bunch of research was done. This is not a theory anymore, any more than it's a theory that blood sugar or blood pressure is homeostatically regulated. What we mean by that is if you look at any scientific study that's ever been conducted which restricts calories, all you need to show, hey, is the body trying to balance itself automatically, is does the body consistently respond to a restriction of calories, aka reduction of calories in, with an automatic and unconscious reduction of calories out? And the answer is yes. If you don't believe this, don't eat tomorrow and watch how cold and tired you get. That's because your body is automatically slowing down in an effort to counterbalance fewer calories in with fewer calories out. Similarly, in overfeeding studies, believe it or not, these exist. There's quite a few done. There was some pretty famous one done on prison inmates, in fact, where these inmates were told to eat and eat and eat, and what they found was when individuals were eating 5,000 or 10,000 calories per day, their base metabolic rate spiked in an effort to try to balance calories out for them automatically. So this also explains how you can have a 70-year-old postmenopausal woman who's eating 800 calories per day and still not able to lose weight. Her body has balanced itself out in a way where 800 calories per day, well, it seems like too few calories, her body has become so accustomed and used to that it's balancing itself out at that point. So what we need to do is not tell this woman who's struggling, eat 400 calories per day, but rather how can we change that system itself to demand more than 800 calories per day and to start burning, let's say 400 additional calories per day automatically from your hips rather than with food that passes through your lips.
So how does that happen? How do you go from that place? Because I know for this woman, she's eating 800 calories. She knows if she eats 1,000, she puts on a pound. It just happens. It's just like she goes into freak out mode. So, how do you go from that just like barely being able to get by with how she's eating to then being able to eat somewhat of a more balanced diet and still maintain her weight or even lose weight?
First step is psychological, because as long as she or he, whatever the case may be, is thinking in terms of calories, this is going to be a challenge. Right. But if you think instead in terms of sanity, or what I posit should replace calories, or calories 2.0, SANE score, you would think in terms of primarily 4 food groups. First is non-starchy vegetables. These are vegetables you could eat raw. You don't have to eat them raw, but you could eat them raw. For example, corn and potatoes can't be eaten raw. Those are not non-starchy vegetables, whereas green leafy vegetables, peppers, asparagus, broccoli, mushrooms, all that good stuff, non-starchy vegetables. Nutrient-dense protein would be the second food group. These are humanely raised animals, wild-caught seafood, foods that have a lot of essential nutrients in it and get the vast majority of their calories from the macronutrient protein. So non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein. Next is whole food fats. So these are a whole food. So olive oil is not a whole food. Doesn't mean it's bad for you. It just doesn't fit into this category. Olives are a whole food that get the vast majority of their calories from fat. Also very nutrient dense, so whole food fats, and then finally low fructose fruits. So we need to think in terms of those 4 food groups, and we need to eat just an abundance of non-starchy vegetables. That's like rule number 1. And I know it's not easy. Kermit the Frog has told us for many years it's not easy being green, but we can do it. We can do it with the thanks of modern technology like Vitamixes and blenders and all kinds of good stuff. We can make green smoothies, and we can eat 10 plus servings of non-starchy vegetables per day. That in and of itself will provide a therapeutic dose of nutrition that will very much help to neutralize and reverse many of the dysfunctions that take place, which are causing that person's body to think it only needs 800 calories per day. Then second, we're going to eat nutrient-dense protein. So we're going to eat somewhere between 90 and 200 grams of nutrient-dense protein per day, depending on our age, gender, and activity level. So 70-year-old sedentary small female, more on the 90 to 100 gram end of the spectrum. 20-year-old crossfitting male, more like the 200 gram end of the spectrum. And this is really important because this is going to help to rev up our metabolism. It's going to help us to maintain lean muscle tissue and preferentially burn fat. And it's also going to trigger an amazing process called muscle protein synthesis, which in and of itself, if triggered 3 to 6 times per day, can rebuild up to 250 grams of you per day. And that's an incredibly calorically expensive process. Researchers estimate that anywhere from 5 to 700 calories could be burnt per day simply synthesizing new tissue in your body if you eat sufficient and high enough quality protein. So an abundance of non-starchy vegetables, a surplus of nutrient-dense protein, then you're going to get the balance of your actual calories from whole food fat, because vegetables do not have many calories in them at all. Protein is not a really good source of energy. It's a structural component, so those calories are not necessarily being used for energy. We can get into that later if we have time. So you're getting the vast majority of your energy from whole food fats because it's hormonally healing, and it does all sorts of good things if you're getting it from monounsaturated fats and omega-3 fats, such as those found in fish, to literally reverse the inflammation in your brain that causes this calorie balance to get all messed up. So again, you're getting calories, you're getting therapeutic nutrition, and then if you need something sweet, you're eating low fructose fruits. So berries and citrus fruits rather than things like bananas, apples, and grapes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something people don't really realize is just laying down all day, you're actually going to burn a good amount of calories just with normal metabolism. I remember doing a body impedance analysis test, just a little electrodes, and calculated what my, my just resting, basal metabolic rate or whatever it was, and it was like at 1,200 or 1,300 calories or something like that, just doing absolutely nothing. And that was a real big paradigm shift for me. This is years ago before ever going to medical school. And I was like, wow, just doing nothing, I burn a big amount of calories. That's fascinating to me. So the average person thinks, oh my God, I go to the gym and I burn 400 calories and then I'm eating 2,000 a day. Holy crap, I'm going to, get so fat. It's like people get so obsessed with this. And furthermore, with the whole scale thing, I mean, do you just tell people to throw away their scale?
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate because there's a little rule in science that scientists don't really want to tell people, and that's we measure what's easy to measure. Like, we don't necessarily measure what is useful. We measure what's easy to measure. Cholesterol is a good example of this. Weight is another one. Like, the reason cholesterol is so popular is because it's really easy to measure. And there's a lot of other things that are much more meaningful, but they're not easy to measure. Weight is really easy to measure, so that's why everyone measures it. But there's something that's as easy, if not easier, and that's waist circumference. The thing that's so beautiful about waist circumference, so if you want to make your scale happy, here's a secret. This is, I don't tell this to everybody. I warn you, this because I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you how you can lose. Are you ready? How to lose 30 to 50 pounds immediately and keep it off for the rest of your life. Are you ready? I'm not even going to charge you for this.
Yes.
Cut off your right leg. Right? You're done. The scale right there, 30 to 50 pounds gone. And the scale will say you were successful. You made a good decision. False. Clearly you didn't. And again, is that a silly example? Well, when you look at the fact that 95.4% of people who restrict calories end up yo-yo dieting, and that yo-yo dieting has been correlated with just about every terrible affliction that can ever become a person. Starvation dieting is a bit like cutting off your metabolic leg. It's not a good idea, and it will work if success means you drop the number on the scale, but that's why you don't want to use the scale, because it's going to reward you for slowly killing yourself, whereas a waist circumference does a much better job of saying, look, you want to maintain or build lean muscle tissue and burn body fat, and you don't do that through starvation.
Mm-hmm. How do you turn on the fat burning hormones? I know that's a big thing that you talk about in your book, is all about hormones. So what are some just easy things people can do that would turn on their fat burning hormones and turn off the fat storing hormones?
The 4 food groups I mentioned earlier are going to be 70 to 80% of it. So getting the vast, what you eat in order is non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein, whole food fats, and low-sugar fruits. That's going to do a huge amount for you. Doing the type of exercise we talk about in the book will also help, but why? Let me give a quick explanation of why this matters. So hormones, everyone talks about hormones. It's like synergy in business, right? Like synergy, hormones. It's just patriotism. These just awesome words, which have kind of lost all meaning.
I hate the word synergy. Oh, I hate that word synergy.
Paradigm. Okay, strategy. All right, so I'm ready for, what are we talking about? Hormones. So the reason that hormones matter so much, the best way to think about it is hormones are how your various parts of your body talk to each other. So right now we're speaking English, that's why we can understand each other. If your brain wants to communicate something to your gut or vice versa, it's hormones for all intents and purposes that make that communication happen. Now, the reason this matters is people think that, for example, eating calories makes them fat. That's not true. Hormonal signals make you fat. So a great example of this is insulin therapy in diabetics. Diabetics have to rotate where they inject insulin into their body, because if they don't, they'll get localized fat deposits, because the hormone insulin literally says store fat. Store fat. When it communicates store fat. An example that I think probably everyone can empathize with intellectually, hopefully, because hopefully no one's ever done this, is the steroids. So steroids are essentially when people inject the hormone testosterone into their body. So someone could literally sit on the couch, change nothing about their life, and inject themselves with steroids, and we would all expect that they would build muscle and burn fat. Why? Because testosterone tells your body, build muscle and burn fat. So certainly we do not want to inject ourselves with steroids, but what we need to do is use our food and exercise to change the hormones that are circulating in our body, so that the conversation between our brain, our gut, our musculature, our adipose tissue stops from being hang on to fat, burn less calories, hang on to fat, burn fewer calories, eat more calories, to being burn more fat, feel more satiated, burn more fat, exude more energy, feel more satiated, maintain lean muscle tissue. If we can change that conversation, then we can change the way our body looks and the way it feels almost automatically, because it's really on autopilot at that point.
That sounds awesome. Autopilot. And then the exercise frequency, you talk about doing that a lot less. I mean, what, a couple times a week? Is that kind of like all you need? I mean, I know for women who are listening, I mean, a lot of my listeners are women, a lot of my patients. So they're going to yoga, like I said, every day. They're doing cardio like 45 minutes to 2 hours, when they first come in to see me. A lot of what I do is just unlearning them, just trying to have them literally dump all the knowledge they've had their whole life and just start from scratch, like reset button. Let's just forget everything and just listen to me, listen to what I'm saying, and that makes a big difference. But for hearing me tell them to exercise less is like so hard for them to hear. But they do that. I mean, I've had patients, and I've talked about this on my show, where I tell them they have to quit CrossFit. They can't do CrossFit anymore. They have to just hike a couple times a week for 3 months. Or, once their adrenals are healed, okay, now we can do some intervals twice a week, and we can add in some weights. I mean, and it makes a difference. They actually start to lose weight. It's mind-blowing. So what's kind of your philosophy with that? Like, how much exercise? Does it matter if it's a woman versus a man?
I do not see a huge difference between a woman and a man. We're all Homo sapiens here, and at the end of the day, the same thing causes diabetes in a man that it does in a woman, and the same things cause lung cancer in a man as a woman. The same things cause obesity, and that's obesity is treated as something different. It shouldn't. It's a disease. It's a breakdown of a body's homeostatic mechanism, just like diabetes is. Anyway, so same for a man and a woman for all intents and purposes for the 90% case. And when we talk about exercise frequency, it's really dependent on the type of exercise we're doing. And the reason I say exercise less is because the type of exercise which has been shown to most effectively change the hormonal composition of your body is very intense. And when I say intense, I don't mean flipping tires and powerlifting. I mean recruiting a lot of muscle fibers in a slow and sustainable and safe way. And intensity is really just another word for the amount of energy it uses. So driving your car at 200 miles an hour is more intense driving than driving your car at 20 miles an hour. And you would certainly imagine that you would run out of gasoline faster driving your car more intensely than you would if you were driving your car less intensely. And similarly, if you are exercising with greater intensity, you can't exercise a lot. It's not because you're lazy. It's just because you run out of energy really fast, and it's such a taxing activity that you can't do it frequently. In fact, if you can do it frequently, there's a wonderful irony in these workout DVDs that are so popular nowadays that are like, we're so intense that you should do us 50 minutes a day, 6 days a week. If something's that intense, how in God's name can you do it 50 minutes a day, 6 days a week? Like, try to squat your body weight on your back 50 minutes a day, 6 days a week. It's impossible, right? Try sprinting full out 50 minutes a day, 6 days a week. You can't, right? There's an inverse relationship between the intensity of an activity and the duration and frequency with which you can do it. And research has consistently shown that if you want to change the hormonal composition of your body, the answer is not to dial up quantity of exercise. The answer is to dial up the quality of the exercise that you're doing. And by definition, the higher the quality of your exercise, the higher the intensity, the more energy you're going to use, and the less exercise you can do. So if you're exercising a lot, by definition, it's not high intensity exercise. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't walk 10,000 steps a day. I don't consider that exercise. I consider that just being a person. I think we should all be people. I think there's a reason we have legs. I think we should play with our kids. I think we should walk around. I think things like yoga and Tai Chi and stretching and Pilates, these restorative activities, should be done as much as we can fit into our lives. They're fabulous for us. However, things like exercise, when we really say exercise, that needs to be done with high intensity, high safety, infrequently, and for short durations.
Where do you feel like adrenal function comes into it? You know, like if someone's just pretty wiped adrenally, do you think that that's okay for them to do, or should they take a break for a while and then add that in? I mean, what's your take on that?
Someone who has a severe adrenal restriction, just like if someone had the flu, right? If someone has the flu, you're not going to say, hey, go do heavy breathing squats until you pass out, right? I mean, if you're sick,
I think you'd still do that.
It may be in my younger days, but I have since learned my lesson. Actually, I haven't.
I don't know.
But no, so people don't understand. Exercise is potent medicine, right? I mean, exercise is a stress on the body. It puts a massive amount of stress on the body. It can be a positive stress if done appropriately, but it can also be bastardized. A great example of this is people who wake up early to jog. So they compromise sleep to do exercise, which just like wreaks hormonal havoc, right? You should really only be doing intense exercise if you're otherwise quite healthy. Until you get quite healthy in place first, it's going to be counterproductive.
That's good. I like that. So a lot of the women who come to see me are on the paleo diet, and sometimes we'll find that and they'll come to see me because they're not losing weight on the paleo diet, where men will lose weight just, like I said, you know, just looking at a treadmill, weight just falls off of them. You're not even getting on the treadmill, just look at it and it falls off. Whereas a woman, maybe doing the same diet, it doesn't happen the same. So have you seen this where a woman going on paleo or primal eating, they don't really lose the weight they want? And do you have any idea why this might be the case? Any ideas?
I do, yes. And there are some fascinating studies in the book that also help to explain it. So
yes.
Accidental spousal weight loss is something that I have commonly seen. So it's often the female in the relationship's trying really hard, and oftentimes she's the food CEO of the household. So her husband or partner ends up also going sane or eating more nutrient-dense food, and their pants start falling off. Whereas for the female, just nothing's happening, and she gets so frustrated. And sometimes people say, well, what is it in that moment that's causing that to happen? And what if you dig into the research a little bit, it's actually not what's happening right then that's causing the problem. It's what has happened years prior that is causing the problem.
Right.
Because what you find in these relationships is oftentimes the man has never counted calories. He's never starved himself. He's never yo-yo dieted. So he has not as severely broken his metabolism. So let's say the woman, though, has yo-yo dieted many times, up and down and restricted her calories constantly. So just like if you had fractured your ankle 6 times prior, the 7th time you break it, it's going to take even longer than the first 6 times for it to get better. The same thing happens here. There's really compelling rodent studies in the book, and the reason there's a lot of rodent studies in the book is because you could never do these studies on people because they'd never let you do it because starvation is torture. But they find that every single time they starve these rats and then let the rats eat food again, they every single time they lose weight slower and gain fat faster when they stop, every single time. So I mean, I'm here to tell the truth. The truth isn't always happy, but just understand that the more often you've yo-yo dieted in the past, the more metabolic healing is going to take place before anything happens. And you might need to start thinking about weight loss a little bit like you'd think about, or fat loss, excuse me, like a bone healing. So let's go back to the fractured ankle example. You break your ankle, you put it in a cast on day 1. On day 2, it doesn't really seem like anything's happened. On day 3, it doesn't really seem like anything's happened. In fact, if you're 70 and you broke your ankle, you might have that cast on for a few weeks or months, and it doesn't really seem like anything's happening. But one day the cast comes off and you can walk around on your ankle for the rest of your life because it's healed. We need, if you've yo-yo dieted consistently in the past and you start to say, I'm not going to restrict calories, I'm going to improve food quality, I would basically just say the first 3 months are healing time. Like, it's just time for my body to heal. So your goal is not fat loss at that point. Your goal is getting back to a baseline level of health that will then make fat loss simple for the rest of your life.
Oh, I love that. I just want to take a little sound bite out of the show. That is just, it's genius. I love what you said. And I have patients do that. I say, throw away your scale. Don't focus. You might gain 10 pounds during the beginning of this, but we're healing your body. Your metabolism is going to heal, and over time you will be able to lose it for good. We got to do some real healing, and it takes a while to do that. So I love that. I think that's brilliantly stated.
Oh, well,
awesome.
thank you. And
so
one other just quick distinction that I think might help your listeners with that too is humans consistently, we make mental errors. This is why things like riddles and these optical illusions where it's like, which line is longer? And you look at them and you're like, that line is longer. And then the person's like, haha, they're both the same length. So our brain consistently makes certain mistakes. So we often think everything works linearly, right? So if I eat 500 fewer calories, there's going to be this linear progression where I'm going to lose a pound per week. And clearly that will continue to work until I weigh 0 pounds, right? No, like that's not how things work. Your body doesn't necessarily work linearly. If you have a fever and you're healing yourself, it's not like your body temperature goes down 1/10 of a point every minute, right? Some things don't behave linearly, and that can oftentimes be the case with fat loss. I've actually seen, sometimes people say fat loss happens quickly at the beginning and then slower. I've seen the exact opposite quite frequently, where an individual, we see really no change, very little change in their body composition for weeks or even a couple months. And then one day, they just start shrinking. And it doesn't seem like they've changed anything. It's just like they start to shrink and they don't really know what's going on. Well, what's going on is at some point your body's reached a threshold where it's flipped from fat storage mode into fat burning mode. We used to call this in our little community like the waterfall effect, where it's just like boom, and then the floodgates open. So I also wouldn't, just because nothing's happened for 2 months or 3 months, things might change dramatically in month 4.
Yes, I've seen that happen too. It's like, wow, all of a sudden, and it's usually when the patient isn't even really trying anymore, and all of a sudden, wow, I'm losing weight. That's so cool. It's like a nice side effect because they've started to change their focus on, I'm going to focus on getting healthy, not focus so much on fat loss, and and they give it some time, and all of a sudden they're actually losing weight. So it's great. Okay, I'm going to open up to the phone lines. For you callers on the switchboard, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and press 1. I see a few of you guys on the switchboard. If you want to ask a question, press 1. Jonathan, I'd love to know, what do you eat? What did you eat today? What's like a day in the life of you?
Well, it's actually in the Calorie Myth book. So there's a frequently asked question in there. So it's in there. But my answer is going to be quite boring because it follows those 4 food groups I just mentioned. I drink all sorts of green smoothies. Today I made a bunch of dandelion green smoothies because they had dandelion greens at Safeway, so that was awesome. I had some eggs. I had some salmon. I love seafood, so I had some clams and some oysters. I had macadamia nuts and almonds, and I had a little bit of berries. And I had a Quest bar because I like Quest bars. And what else? And I drank a lot of water and green tea. And that's probably about it. That was quite a bit of food, though.
That's not boring. That sounds like what I eat. That's awesome. What do you feel about coffee? Do you drink coffee? What's your stance on that?
I do drink coffee on occasion. Coffee has... I mean, there's good things about coffee. There's things that aren't great about coffee. I personally would if you must have caffeine and you're not addicted to coffee already, I would strongly recommend you get your caffeine from green tea. It is miraculous, and add some lemon to it, and it's even more miraculous. That said, if you drink coffee, I don't think we have an obesity epidemic in this country because people are drinking too much coffee, too much black coffee, that is. So yeah, I mean, personally, as a general rule of thumb, if it's not a green smoothie, don't drink things that have calories in it. And they can be like, oh, you wrote a book called The Calorie Myth. It's not the calories don't exist. It's that they shouldn't be your primary focus. So the general rule of thumb is you don't drink your calories, right? If you want to see how bodybuilders get big, they drink calories because it's the easiest way to get calories into your body. So don't drink calories. Coffee, calorie free, aka black coffee, yeah, it's okay. Green tea, even better.
Your wife, Angela, as I said in the beginning, she's super hot. What does she eat? What does she do for exercise? I want to get personal and see what she does.
Well, Angela has a really cool story. She has a really cool story. She started out as a cross-country runner. So when I met her, she did not look like she is today. So you see today, she is much more of a sprinter body type than that of a cross-country runner. And she did the typical, she literally exercised 6 days per week at an incredibly high-starch diet. And she's an accountant, CPA, tax manager. So during her busy season, leading up to April 15th, she would consistently gain 10 to 20 pounds per year. Okay, so fast forward. This was in her late teens, early 20s. Okay, so now she's in her early 30s. So it's 10 years later. She exercises once or twice per week. Smarter exercise, like I describe in my book, so higher intensity, higher safety, and she's completely sane, meaning she eats non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein, whole food fats, and low-sugar fruits in that order. In fact, she's even more routine than I am. She eats like salmon and kale and eggs and nuts and coconut. She kind of just eats the same stuff every day because that's what she likes to do. And so she eats a lot. She eats a massive amount. In fact, my mother is like, how does someone that size fit that much food in her body? When we went on the low-carb cruise with Jimmy Moore, people were just like, this is crazy. Like, you guys are eating more than anyone else on this ship. How do you physically fit that much food in your body? But yeah, so she eats a lot. She exercises a little, and she is healthier and fitter than she's ever been in her entire life. So
that's awesome. Awesome. Well, it looks like my caller has the guts to come on the show now. Okay, so caller from the 770, welcome to the show. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, this is Lance. I'm from San Diego. How you doing, Dr.
Hey, Lance. Good. What's your question?
So I am trying to add chicken back into my diet, and I know that grain-fed animals aren't the best choice. And I was reading on Mark Sesson's blog about the fact that if it's organic, I guess that's okay, but the best thing that you can do is get pasture. So I wanted to just get your opinion on the whole, since some of the organic chickens, they have to eat grains in order to meet the USDA standards. I was wondering what your opinion is on that, because I know that with the grains it raises the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and you kind of want to stay away from that.
Jonathan, did you want to chime in with that, or?
Oh no, you can go ahead. It's all good.
Okay.
Oh no, I was asking both of you guys.
Yeah. Well, Lance, you know that you want to get things pasture raised if you can. I know you're in San Diego, and there's some great farmers markets here, so I think you're able to get pasture raised chickens. Chickens should be able to eat bugs and things like that. They shouldn't be just fed grains because that's not really their natural diet. And and unfortunately, oftentimes the grains have arsenic actually in them, and that creates insulin resistance. So the chickens get a lot fatter, which makes them grow a lot faster, and it's just not a good thing. If you can have, organic and pasture-raised chicken, that would be better. So I would just say if you can be selective and go that route. If you can't go that route, then definitely organic chicken would be second best choice, but pasture-raised is really the way to go if you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you have any follow-up?
No, I would agree with that, and I think it's the one piece of feedback that I would add, which is very much in line with that, is really just making sure you focus on the big things. I can't tell you how many people I have who ask me a question very similar to the excellent question you just asked. At the same time, I might come back to it with them and say, hey, how many hours of sleep do you get a night? And they say 4, 5, maybe 5. And I would say, I would urge you to take all the mental energy you currently spend on where you acquire your chickens from and focus it on getting 7 hours of sleep per night consistently, right? And eating, like, how many servings of green leafy vegetables do you eat per day on average? If you ask most Americans, they'll say 0. I would say getting that number up to at least 5, like spending your energy on that before. Think about it like if your car was on fire or you saw your neighbor's car on fire and then you saw them like using a toothbrush to clean off the grill. You'd be like, dude, your car is on fire. What are you doing? Right? Same kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Understanding, setting the priorities as far as what it is that you're eating, because I know that the whole movement is about eating real foods. And a lot of people have problems with just getting the base of their diet right instead of wondering about, like, organic this or pasteurize that. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Lance. And I will see
thank
you
you.
soon.
Yes, you will.
All right. All right. Well, Jonathan, that's pretty much our time. Do you have any parting words, anything you want to leave with us before you go? And then also, where can people follow up on what you're doing and keep in touch with you?
In closing, I just urge people, at the end of the day, there's 2 things you can do to try to change the way you look and feel. One is you can change the quantity of food you're eating. The other is you can change the quality of food you're eating. And studies have consistently shown that if you change the quality of food you're eating, your brain will automatically take care of the quantity of food you're eating, so why not do that? It's the easier and more effective approach. And then, if you want more information on that, check out SANE Solution. That's SANE, sanesolution.com. We have an amazing amount of free resources and apps and online programs and videos and exercise demos and all kinds of cool stuff. So sanesolution.com.
Right on. Good job, Jonathan. Good to have you on the show. Thanks for being an awesome, fun guest. And when will I see you again? Are you going to be at the next JJ thing, or where am I going to be able to see your awesome smile and dance with you and Angela again? And where am I going to see you again? I'm wondering that.
I don't know. Well, the other next thing is in Florida, which is like literally the furthest point away from where I live in the country. So
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to make it. I could either go to Florida or like Japan. So like I'd probably rather spend my money flying to Japan. So I don't know if I'll be at that one, but hopefully soon thereafter.
I don't blame you. Well, I will see you soon either way. So awesome. Thanks so much. And I'll talk with you soon.
Beautiful. Have a good one.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. Bye. All right, you guys. That's